and good evening, everybody. Welcome back again to this webinar series uh, on Western philosophy. We are discussing on Kant. It's a series of lectures on Kant, and during the course of the last lecture, which was on Transcendental Aesthetic, well, I was absent. I don't know what has been discussed because prior engagements I could not attend, but still then it was on, as we all know, it was on uh, uh, the Kantian conception of space and time. Well, much would have been said, but still I was not there, so I'm not making an introductory note on that. But anyhow, but today Professor Das will be speaking on the Transcendental Analytic, and let's see what uh, uh, are the things that he is going to discuss. Well, what is the new style? What are the new things that he is going to put forth before us? So, as we know, that Professor Das puts things in a very simple manner, in a very precise terms, clear terms, understandable manner, and let's see how he puts the transcendental analytic before us in clearer terms. So, with these words, let us move to Professor Das for the lecture. Welcome, Professor Das. Maybe Professor Das is not ready or some issues. Well, we'll wait for some time. Well, anyway, yes, Professor Das is ready.
Namaskar. Namaskar to all of you. Respected Dr. Rao, very esteemed other participants. Today, we shall discuss Transcendental Analytic. This is a very beautiful topic. As I always say, every topic is beautiful if we have a taste for it. The beauty of everything is really visualized by a philosopher, by a thinker. That is how we have different types of philosophy, and every philosophy has its own beauty. Immanuel Kant has given much importance on the limitation of knowledge. Therefore, his philosophy is known as critique of pure reason. In this book, he has criticized very rationally, not dogmatically, not skeptically, very rationally, about the limitations of both the schools, the school of empiricism and the school of rationalism. Generally, we think that rationalism is free from dogmatism. But Immanuel Kant said that both empiricism and rationalism are subject to dogmatism if they are not complete, if they are not comprehensive in their approach. That means being one-sided is a type of dogmatism. Don't be one-sided. We should not have any partial view in philosophy because we don't have any personal interest to advocate any philosophy. We have to try to understand the reality in its totality, in a very comprehensive way. And those who have done that, they have become famous. At least they have tried. The best example is Descartes. Another example is John Locke. Another example is David Hume. And the best example is Immanuel Kant. To speak something new, to go against the established truths. What can be said better? So that is the real rationalistic approach. So far as human knowledge is concerned, we should be very much critical because epistemology is the door to metaphysics. If we want to reach at a metaphysical conclusion, then the door is epistemological door. If we are not sound, strong in our epistemology, then our metaphysical conclusions will not be so convincing. Therefore, Lord Buddha remained silent about metaphysical issues because he was aware of the limitation of epistemology. So far as our epistemology is concerned, we can't perceive, we can't conceive, we can't give a conclusion about the metaphysical status of any substance, be it matter, be it mind, be it God. Therefore, he remained silent. David Hume did not remain silent. He loudly claimed that there is no such matter, no such mind, no such God, because that is impossible, because they are not perceived. If we take the empirical condition that to be is to be perceived, then on this ground, the substantial status of body, mind, and God shall be cancelled, shall be rejected. They will have no position to stand. So, empiricism reached at its climax by rejecting all substantial elements, substantial entities, and rationalism reached at its climax by accepting the substantial status to everything. That means each and every monad, according to Leibniz, is a substance, is a spiritual substance. And by that, we can explain the entire universe. All ideas are innate, according to Leibniz, and according to empiricist philosophers, no ideas are innate. But it is Immanuel Kant who is rejecting both the empiricist and rationalist philosophers, and at the same time, he is appreciating, he is accepting the merits of both the schools. When Leibniz says all ideas are innate, this is not accepted by Immanuel Kant. When John Locke said that no ideas are innate, then that was also not accepted by Immanuel Kant. Because if all ideas will be innate, then there will be no status of the empirical world, the outside world. We cannot say that matter is unreal, matter is useless, the empirical world is useless. Then we shall live in an idealistic world, in an imaginary world, where only ideas like Platonic universals, only ideas exist. There is no chance of the existence of the particulars. No need of any empirical world. Again, Leibniz committed another mistake. He said that there is pre-established harmony. That harmony is pre-established by God. So this is another mistake he committed, and Immanuel Kant rejected this view. Immanuel Kant is speaking about a priori. That means that is also equal to innate, something innate. That means which is free from, which is independent of experience. And that is pre-programmed, not pre-established by God. Immanuel Kant says that the a priori conditions of mind, these a priori conditions are not pre-established by God, they are pre-programmed. They are so programmed that through these programs, our mechanism of epistemology, our knowing systems are controlled, are regulated. That means Immanuel Kant is accepting both the empirical world and the mind, the a priori conditions of mind. Immanuel Kant is accepting both sensibility and understanding. It is not a one-sided philosophy. Therefore, it is critical. Critical means one should be open. One should not be trapped by one side. It should not be one-sided. That only experience is the source of knowledge or only region is the source of knowledge. No, both region and experience, understanding and experience are necessary for knowledge. Because we have to collect the sense data from the empirical world. So we cannot negate, we cannot deny the existence of the outside world. We can't. Something is there, the source is there from which I am collecting the data through my sense experience. What exactly that source is, this is a question that is debatable. Whether it is phenomena or it is noumena, whether it is real or appearance, that is different. But there must be something from which I am collecting the data, sense data. John Locke also said that. Therefore, Immanuel Kant accepted John Locke. John Locke also said that there is a source for primary qualities, but I know not what. Logically, it is presupposed that there must be a matter of which we are perceiving the primary qualities. No attributes without a substance. So the existence of substance is logically ascertained by the existence of the attributes or the primary qualities. But the epistemology, the knowledge of that substance is not possible because I can't perceive it. I perceive the substance through its qualities. So substance exists, but if you ask me about my knowledge about substance, then I shall say I know not what. I am here, I am present, I exist. From this, logically, it implies that my forefathers must have existed. But if you ask me, have you seen your forefathers? I will say no. I have not seen. But without their existence, my existence is impossible. Similarly, Immanuel Kant says, what is the real status of a world that we shall find after a discussion, but there and without that no knowledge is possible. But where from these sense come? What is the status of that source? That is again questioned. Therefore, Immanuel Kant's philosophy is called agnosticism. That I don't know exact nature of the source from which the sense data. But sense data are objective. They are there outside my mind, and they are from a source. That source, Immanuel Kant, is called the world that appears to us. The real source, the thing in itself, is not known to us because we can't know it. That is the limitation of human knowledge. If you claim that you know something, first of all, you have to know the limit of your knowing mechanism. What can you know? What can you know that one should be aware of? Immanuel Kant is very much aware of the limit of human knowing mechanism. That whatever I perceive through the a priori conditions, a priori forms of mind. So mind is not passive. Mind has an active role in knowledge. Before Kant, both empiricist and rationalist philosophers, they were trying to claim that mind is not so much active in the knowledge situation. Some rejected minds, that there is a mental substance, mind is a substance, some rejected minds. And some ignored minds. They thought that knowledge is derived from the external world through sense organs. So mind is passive. Immanuel Kant made a revolution in philosophy by claiming that mind is not passive, mind is active, because without the interference of mind, we can't start knowledge, the process of knowledge. So there is the empirical world. Here the empirical world becomes passive. Because without the interference, without the interference of an active mind, we can't have the knowledge of the empirical world. Whatever we perceive through the a priori conditions of mind. In the first step, even when we are perceiving something, we generally think that there is no role of mind because we can perceive through our sense organs. But Immanuel Kant says, you can't perceive without the interference of mind. That is space and time. Space and time are two a priori forms of a mind through which you can perceive the external world. That means whatever we perceive, that is spatio-temporally conditioned. That is spaced and timed. Beyond space and time, we don't have any access and we can't know anything. This is the first door of epistemology to know the reality. So automatically, the world that we perceive, that becomes phenomenal because that is through our subjective conditions. They are space and time. So the real world, which is beyond space and time, that is unknown and unknowable, because the very condition of knowing is space and time. So through space and time, we received the sense data from the external world. How did you do that? That is called transcendental aesthetic. Immanuel Kant has given three important status of human mind, three important activities of human mind. The first activity is called transcendental aesthetic. The second one is transcendental analytic. The third one is transcendental dialectic. Mainly two. One is transcendental aesthetic and the other is transcendental logic. Two types is divided into two types: transcendental analytic and transcendental dialectic. So that means mind is very much active in every step of knowledge. This is the contribution of Immanuel Kant. Even when we are perceiving something through our sense organs, it is not possible without the interference of mind. I am just repeating. I have already said that exactly the same thing is said in Naya system, where also we know that knowledge is not possible by mere contact of a sense organ and object. For knowledge, we have threefold contact. Objects, contact between sense organ and object, contact between mind with sense organs, and contact between soul with mind. Otherwise, knowledge is impossible. He has given so many examples. Similarly, in Immanuel Kant, it is said that even if we are having perception, mere contact between sense organ and object is not sufficient. They are to be perceived through, and they are generally perceived. It's common sense. Immanuel Kant says it's common sense. Minutely you observe the way of a perception, how you perceive. Ask yourself the question, can you perceive anything which does not exist in space and time? We have not asked this question. Therefore, we don't know it. The moment we shall start asking this question to ourselves, then we shall find that it is nothing but a common sense philosophy. That no perception is possible without the a priori conditions of space and time, and these space and time are a priori forms of mind. That means why they are a priori? Because they are independent of experience. Therefore, Immanuel Kant is using the word transcendental frequently Frequently he is using the word transcendental, meaning that something is there in the mind which is independent of experience, which cannot be experienced. But without that, no experience is possible. Transcendental means a priori, independent of experience. Another meaning of transcendental is universal. It is here we are not discussing about my mental conditioning or your mental conditioning, or the mental conditioning of a poor man or a rich man, of a king or an ordinary man. No, it is a universal format of every mind. Therefore, it is transcendental. Transcendental means universal. Transcendental means which is independent of experience. So space and time are universal forms of each and every mind, and space and time are independent of experience. But without space and time, we can't have any possible perception. This is discussed in Transcendental Aesthetic. We have discussed this much in our previous session. Today we shall discuss Transcendental Analytic. Suppose we collected the data, sense data, through one examination, that must confirm the a priori conditions of space and time. Now some sense data are selected by the first written test. Those who did not qualify the space and time category of minds, they are not in the selection. They are out of the selection. But that is not knowledge. Immanuel Kant agreed with David Hume that each and every sensation is discrete and distinct. Immanuel Kant is also accepting that. So these discrete and distinct sensations are received through space and time, but they are to be synthesized. They are to be synthesized. Otherwise, we can't have judgment. So there is a difference between sensibility and judgment. We received the discrete ideas, discrete sensations from the empirical world, but they remained discrete, separated. Therefore, there is no possibility of a judgment. What happens in the case of a judgment? The subject and the predicate, they are to be synthesized, they are to be joined. Otherwise, no judgment is possible. Similarly, in a deduction, the premises and conclusions, they should be related. Otherwise, there will be no conclusion, no deduction. If the premises and conclusions are separated from each other, there is no link. If they are not logically connected, we can't say that it is a valid deduction. Similarly, we can't say that any statement is merely a judgment. Judgment is possible when there is a synthesis between subject and predicate. Now, the second interview, the second examination will start. That in case of knowledge, the collection of sense data is not enough. They should be synthesized. They should be synthesized through the categories of understanding. So here, Immanuel Kant is giving focus on the a priori categories of understanding. There are 12 a priori categories of understanding. They are derived from, Kant has borrowed these 12 categories of understanding, a priori forms of understanding from Aristotle. Aristotle has made 4 types of propositions. One is quantity, quality, then relation, and the fourth one is modality. Out of these 4 types of categories of propositions, Immanuel Kant has made 12 types of categories of understanding, which are a priori forms of human mind. So whenever we shall make a judgment, we have to take the help of these 12 categories of understanding. Suppose, and that is called rational reasoning. That is called rational reasoning. That means our reasoning process is not accidental. Our reasoning process should be through these 12 categories of understanding. But sometimes what happens, if mind does not obey any one of these 12 categories of understanding, then what will happen? Then any conclusion that will be produced by mind or reason without relating to any one of these 12 categories of understanding, then mind will give statements about unreality. That is called transcendental illusions. Illusions will take place. Illusions will take place when reason works automatically without conforming to the 12 categories of understanding. 12 categories of understanding confirm this much, that your statement must conform to either of these formalities, otherwise it is meaningless. If you speak therefore any metaphysical statement is beyond these 12 categories of understanding, because we cannot fix them, we cannot confine the metaphysical statements we can't fix them, we can't fit them in these 12 categories of understanding. I am giving an example. In Ishavasya Upanishad it is said, there is a verse, tat ejjati tat na ejjati tad dure tad antike, like this. That moves and moves not, that is far and that is near, that is outside everything and that is inside of everything. This is the description of a Brahman, Isha. Ishavasyam idam sarvam, that Isha can be pervaded everywhere. But our logic says one person cannot remain present at 2 places at the same time. So far as place and time are there as empirical conditions for any existence, we can't remain present at 2 places at the same time. If we claim so, then our statement is illogical. Our statement is not sound. Our statement is not rational. Our statement is not logical. Sarva vidyamana. That means one can remain present at all places at one time. This is a contradiction in ordinary logic. So when we go beyond the 12 categories of understanding, we give such statements. Therefore, metaphysics is impossible. Synthetic a priori knowledge is impossible in metaphysics. That is not possible in metaphysics, because in metaphysics, no perception is possible. We don't perceive God, we don't perceive soul, we don't perceive nature. Therefore, we can't speak about them through 12 categories of understanding. Therefore, metaphysical statements sound like this. They appear to be contradictory. Tad ejati, tad na ejati, tad dure, tad antike. What is this? This appears to be contradictory. So, in order to avoid any contradiction, we have to follow any one of these 12 categories of understanding. This program was started by Aristotle. That if you speak something meaningful, sensible, then you have to follow the forms of judgment. You can't avoid the form. Whenever you are giving a judgment, you have to follow certain form. If you go beyond the form, your statement will be illogical. Here Immanuel Kant says, transcendental illusion takes place when reason functions without mind. Without mind means without 12 categories of understanding. So there are 12 categories of understanding. These 12 categories of understanding determine all possible types of judgments in our linguistic system. If we speak beyond that, then we are speaking about illusions. So that is called transcendental illusion. When reason is misused, when reason is functioning according to its own will, without following the 12 categories of understanding, that lands in transcendental illusion. And there are three types of illusion. One is the illusion about God, illusion about soul, illusion about world. World means thing in itself. About these three realities, our mind can't give any judgment through 12 categories of understanding. That means the noumena cannot be judged through mind, through 12 categories of understanding. So a rational man, a rational mind should be very much aware of the use and misuse of reason. Then the question will come, is any statement about God nonsense? Is any statement about soul nonsense? Is any statement about world nonsense? Immanuel Kant will say that is not nonsense, but it has a different sense. As Wittgenstein said, that metaphysical problems take place when language goes on holidays. So we do not misuse one use of language with another use of language. Similarly, Immanuel Kant says we should not confuse one use of reason with another use of reason. Therefore, he made a distinction between pure reason and practical reason. What is pure reason? Pure reason means the ordinary reason that is used by all of us, that is logical reasoning, that is reason through the 12 categories of understanding. This is pure reason. Through this pure reason, we can't have any conclusion, any judgment about the metaphysical issues, existence of God, immortality of soul, and world. But there is a scope for discussion about the metaphysical issues. So that is practical reason. So here Immanuel Kant will shift to the possibility of a faith. We may not have sound reason for these metaphysical issues, but man is free to have a faith in a metaphysical entity. As I have a faith that my forefathers must exist, otherwise how can I exist? So whatever is not perceived, that can be believed. There is no limit to your belief. That is also another faculty of a human mind that will be discussed in Transcendental Dialectic. We shall discuss that in Transcendental Dialectic. But here, in the second process after Transcendental Aesthetic, when we are discussing about Transcendental Analytic, this Transcendental Analytic is again divided into two types. One is the Transcendental Exposition of the 12 categories of called the concepts, and the other is the Transcendental Deduction of categories. Transcendental exposition of a categories, that means the discovery of a categories. How Immanuel Kant discovered which are the forms, which are the categories of understanding, and he discovered these forms from the philosophy of Aristotle. So how he discovered the forms, that is called transcendental exposition of the categories. But the very important thing is that is transcendental deduction. Here I am just using the book because I have not remembered all the categories. Just 1 minute. These are the technical terms used by Immanuel Kant. He is taking the left hand side. There is the kinds of judgment. There are kinds of judgments according to Aristotle, and the right hand side there are the very technical concepts. Immanuel Kant has borrowed the ideas from the ideas of Aristotle. According to quantity, Aristotle says that there are three types of propositions: universal proposition, particular proposition, and a singular proposition. And technically, Immanuel Kant is saying unity, plurality, and totality. Here we shall find the dialectical position of Immanuel Kant's philosophy, that there are out of these three, the first one is thesis, the second one is antithesis, and the third one is the synthesis. So when he is speaking about unity, then its opposite is plurality, and its synthesis is totality. So by this way, he has made a dialectical position of the 12 categories of understanding, and after him, Hegel has developed his dialectical method, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, being influenced by Immanuel Kant's epistemology. Similarly, from quality, there are three types of propositions: affirmative, negative, and infinite. And Immanuel Kant gave the technical name reality, negation, and limitation. Reality is the thesis, negation is the antithesis, and limitation is the synthesis. Similarly, according to relation, Aristotle says categorical, hypothetical, and disjunctive. From this, Immanuel Kant has given the technical name substance and accident, cause and effect, and action and reaction. The last type of judgment, that is modality. According to modality, there are three types of propositions: problematic, assertory, and necessary. And from this, Immanuel Kant has developed his categories of understanding, like possibility, impossibility, existence, non-existence, necessity, and contingency. Now, this is the catalog of our understanding mechanism. That means whatever we understand, whatever we know, whatever we judge, we can't do that beyond these 12 categories of understanding. If we do, then we shall land in transcendental illusions. So mind sometimes suffers from illusions when it becomes illogical. So the rational mind should follow these 12 categories of understanding. Now, this is a question to everybody, that mathematically we can see any sentence we speak, any statement we speak, we can verify, we can examine whether that statement comes under these 12 categories or not. So it is very scientific. It is very scientific because everybody can examine it. The word I am, the sentence I am uttering, the statement I am uttering, the judgment I am giving, that is through these 12 categories or not. At least one category must be fulfilled. If it is not there, if it is outside of these 12 categories of understanding, then I am speaking something illogical. I am speaking something about illusions. I am speaking like a madman. My thought is not logical. So Immanuel Kant's philosophy is better said logical philosophy rather than critical philosophy. How it is logical, how his philosophy is logical, we shall see that in transcendental deduction. In transcendental deduction, Immanuel Kant says how mind plays an important role, an a priori important role in knowledge situation. Therefore, he is giving three steps in transcendental deduction. The number one is the synthesis of apprehension in intuition. I shall explain that. The synthesis of a reproduction in imagination. The synthesis of a recognition in a concept. Whenever we are giving a judgment, suppose grass is green, suppose sky is blue, we utter that sentence so quickly that one will be surprised how such logical processings are involved in making a judgment. But philosophers have noticed that in the fraction of moments we are following so long and varieties of logical processes in order to have a sound judgment, logical judgment, a valid judgment. So these processes are not psychological. These are not psychological processes. Immanuel Kant says it is. David Hume spoke about psychological processes, but empiricist philosophers, all empiricist philosophers, they spoke about psychological process of knowing. But rationalist philosophers, they always speak about logical process of knowing. So these three are the logical process. Logical process means you can't avoid it. Psychology may be avoided. Psychology may be personal. My psychology is different from others. But logic is universal. That means these three a priori functions of mind is common to all. Therefore, it is transcendental. This deduction is transcendental because it is universal, because it is common to all. It is not psychological, it is logical. So the first thing is that whenever we are perceiving, suppose he is giving an example that suppose I am perceiving a long wall I am perceiving. So so I am perceiving the long wall bit by bit. Bit by bit I am perceiving. Suppose there will be a scrolling will go on the TV. In the news section we have seen that scrollings go on so rapidly. So when we try to read the scrolling, we in our intuition we remember the scrolling that is not seen, that is already past. Then only we can understand the complete statement or complete judgment. So in perception, when we perceive something, we don't forget the past perception. We don't forget the past person. Sorry, one phone call is coming. I avoided that. So when we are perceiving something, we are perceiving that bit by bit, and we are not forgetting the past perception. We remember the perception of every bit of it. Therefore, we can see the long wall. So the object of perception is perceived in fragments, and we remember, we can there is a synthesis of apprehension in intuition. That means these are collected in my intuition so that I can synthesize every bit of my perception. We agree with David Hume that our sensations are discrete. Immanuel Kant agrees with this, that our sensations are discrete. Even if that is discrete, we synthesize the discrete sensations, otherwise we can't have a judgment. So in order to have a judgment, we have to synthesize the discrete sensations in our intuition. So so that intuition is an a priori condition. Intuition is not empirical. So in intuition, there is a synthesis of apprehension of the perception of perception of each and every bit, every part. That means the whole is perceived after the synthesis of the perception of the parts. This is general perception. Suppose when we see somebody, when we recognize that person as Rama or Hari, we perceive so many things. We perceive that person's face, we perceive that person's body structure, we hear the language, how he talks. Then assimilating all these things, we recognize, oh, this is Dr. Rao, or this is Jaidev sir, or this is Rama, or this is Hari, or this is. So if we forget one perception after perceiving one thing, what happens naturally to many animals? In some cases that happens to animals, or that happens to very old people, old aged people. They don't recognize. So this is the first condition of transcendental deduction, and that is a logical condition in every knowledge situation. And the second is the synthesis of a reproduction in imagination. The synthesis of a reproduction in imagination. Suppose, 1 minute, just I'm saying. It is very interesting. Reproduction in imagination. That means whatever I have perceived, these perceptions are there in my memory. They should be produced in my imagination. That means if my sensations are just flowing, as David Hume said, that they are just flowing, I always fail to hold myself, because the river is flowing, my sensations are flowing. This is not the case which Immanuel Kant accepts. Immanuel Kant says, no, in that flow, we have to be conscious, and we have to remember the past. The past means the, x1, x2, x3, x4. So the x1, which is perceived just before 1 second, then x2, x3, x4. So when I am with a recent perception, I have to produce the previous perceptions in order to make a judgment. Suppose I am forgetting the previous perceptions, then we can't have a judgment. So it appears that the first and second are similar. No, the first synthesis is about perception. Now here we are speaking about imagination. We are speaking about memory. Whatever is perceived, we perceived in a collective way. We perceived the parts and we made a synthesis. But here we have stored that in our memory, and in making judgment, we have to reproduce what we have already perceived in the past. In the past means before 1 second. Then we can make a judgment that grass is green or sky is blue or anything like that. And this last one is the synthesis of recognition in a concept. This is very interesting. In the course of all perceptions, the perceiver should be aware of the fact that I am perceiving, I am the same person who is continuing the entire series of perception. If I forget that I am perceiving, if that I element, if that knower is absent or absent-minded, then he can't have any judgment. So there is a synthesis in perception, there is a synthesis in imagination, and there is a synthesis in recognition. Recognition means I should recognize that I am perceiving. I am perceiving because something is perceived by me. That is called synthetic apperception. Synthetic apperception. This is very beautifully said by Immanuel Kant. But here we shall discuss exactly the same thing is said by Rene Descartes when he spoke about cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I exist. Unless I exist, I can't think. In order to think, I must exist. Here Immanuel Kant is saying, the moment I am perceiving the series of perceptions I am perceiving and I am making a synthesis, there is I who is perceiving and who is making judgments, and that I is constant. But the difference between Immanuel Kant and and Rene Descartes is that there Rene Descartes claims a permanent I, a permanent knower, a permanent self. I think, therefore I exist. Here that I is a permanent substance, permanent knowing substance. That is I. But here Immanuel Kant is not speaking about a permanent self. Here it is a logical self. Here it is an logical self who is involved in the process of knowledge, because Immanuel Kant is silent about or agnostic about metaphysics. So no way he is accepting the existence of a soul through the pure regions. So whatever we are discussing here, transcendental aesthetic, transcendental analytic, transcendental deduction of categories, these are all about pure region. So through pure region, we can't have any access for a metaphysical permanent self. So the difference between the similarity between Descartes and Kant is both have assumed the existence of a self, the knower, the thinker, as to make the knowledge possible. This is the similarity. The difference is that by that deduction, rational deduction, Descartes is claiming the existence of a permanent self. But here, by deduction, Immanuel Kant is claiming a logical self which is necessary for the synthesis of recognition of all, recognition of the knower. Otherwise, it cannot be synthesized. Perceptions have to be synthesized. The memories have to be synthesized in order to have a judgment. But these synthesis will be possible if there is a knower which is constant in all through the perception. How it is temporary? Immanuel Kant says it is a temporary self, it is not the permanent self. This temporary self is only engaged in one knowledge system. Suppose grass is green. In order to make that judgment, this temporary self is involved. When I am giving another judgment, sky is blue, here this self is absent, remain absent there. That is another knowing self. So when grass is green, started from grass, ended with green. So grass is green is a complete judgment. In this process, there must be a judge, that must be a thinker, that must be a knower, that is only engaged in that mechanism. But when I am giving another judgment, that sky is blue or any other judgment, then there also another self, logical self is to be involved. When that self is absent, when that self is absent, that judgment becomes fallacious. That judgment becomes illogical. That means this is also common sense. In our daily life, suppose we are making 100 judgments. Now, what is the psychology of the present generation? About 50 judgments we are conscious, and about 50 judgments we are unconscious. We are unconsciousness means the judge is absent there. So that does not mean in other 50 cases the judge was absent. So the knowing self is a temporary self which is engaged in every bit of judgment. It is not the permanent self like Descartes and like Vedanta. That self is Jiva Brahmeva Naparha, Atman, Brahman, the soul. That is not this soul. Immanuel Kant will speak of soul in transcendental deduction by faith, not by pure reason. So here he is speaking about the logical self. Okay, so this is very technical. This is very technical, and this is very logical also. So how knowledge becomes possible? Knowledge becomes possible through this epistemological mechanism. We have to collect the sense data through space and time. The first door is closed. But that is not judgment. That is not knowledge. We have to make judgment by applying the 12 categories of understanding. How can we apply? And this is called transcendental deduction. We have to apply these three logical process. One is the synthesis of apprehension in intuition. So intuition is very much required. And then reproduction in imagination. We have to imagine, because what we have already perceived before 1 second, we have to remember that. We have to imagine that. So there is a role of imagination in judgment. Otherwise, we can't have the complete judgment. Speaking about green, if we forget grass, then we shall not speak grass is green. We shall speak something else is green. So in the process, we have to remember all the steps and the synthesis of recognition in a concept. That means we have to recognize that I am the perceiver, I am the judge, who is conscious of, who is aware of all the beats of a perception, all the beats of a understanding. Otherwise, knowledge is impossible. So this is called transcendental analytic. Three faculties are there: transcendental aesthetic, transcendental analytic, and transcendental dialectic. In the next session, we shall discuss transcendental dialectic. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Das, for yet another beautiful lecture. It was again, as I say, very technical, but in spite of being so technical, you have tried to explain the 12 categories as simple as possible, taking the thread from the last class. You clearly made it understandable to all that for Kant, as you already said, that mind is ever active for Kant, but the objects in the external world that approach the mind can only be known if the sense data or the sensations that are received by the activity of the mind are distributed among the 12 categories of understanding. So the categories, they constitute a priori system in the mind, and as you pointed out that there are four types. The 12 categories, they can be divided into four types based on their quality or quantity or modality or relationship. So the sensations once received, they are distributed among the categories according to the quality, quantity, relation or modality, and then by the synthetic activity of the mind, that a judgment is arrived. Say the rose is red or the grass is green, so such sort of judgment is arrived at. So very beautifully you have tried to explain this very difficult concept in so simple terms, and these categories actually very difficult to remember. Now you have simplified the understanding of these categories by making a reference to Aristotle, because most of us, when we teach logic, we do understand the propositions according to quality, we understand propositions according to quantity, relation and modality. So Kant has taken this idea from Aristotle, and if we go by quantity of a proposition, we say the proposition may be universal or particular or singular. So basing on that idea, Kant has devised three categories, that is unity, plurality and totality. So this is the beauty in Kant, and this is did for the rest of the three types of categories, say for quantity, relation and modality. And there lies the beauty in Kant. And in every categorization, we find a triad. You see, when we talk of unity, plurality, totality with relation to quantity, and again when we talk of reality, negation and limitation with reference to quality, you find a triad in every categorization. And this triad, as you said during the course of the lecture, and that has made a basis for the Hegelian dialectics. So dialectical method that we find in Hegel is a development of our Kantian model. So that's a very good take. And one more thing that you have very nicely talked of, the transcendental analytic can be seen as the transcendental exposition of the categories, the understanding of the categories, and then the reduction of categories. As you say, the reduction of categories, well, many times it is a bit of a confusing sort. What exactly the reduction of categories? So as you made it clear, that the application of categories for the possibility of judgments. So very nicely you have done, sir. So it is a great lecture, I think I could say. And one more thing, during the course of the lecture, you have made one important, you have given one more important thought. You talked of the mental illusions also. So all that is not subjected to the categories, when mind explores beyond the categories, so illusions do occur. So this is another good take from the lecture. So overall, I say it's a very good lecture, very technical one, but we have made it so simple and it is understandable, I think, to the participants. And that's how there lies your originality and there lies your say a novelty in presenting difficult things in simple terms. Thank you, sir, for the lecture. I enjoyed this lecture. Well, somebody, Sravani Mr. Madam, she says, thank you for guiding philosophy. Immanuel Kant to understand that your mind versus mind knowledge. Okay, it's again Sravani Mr. Well, she says she's thankful for making a very critical approach, a synthetic approach to the empirical trend and the rational trend, and that has been brought in together by the critical philosophy or the synthetic philosophy of Kant, and wherein both reason and experience have a role to play to bring about what is called the synthetic a priori knowledge. And you have very nicely said that synthetic a priori knowledge is possible in science, say in mathematics, but synthetic a priori knowledge that is not possible in case of metaphysics, which Kant has said. Because, as you said, anything beyond the categories, anything that is not subject to the categories cannot be known. So that's how metaphysics is avoided. Okay, so well, Sravani Mr. Madam, again she wants an understanding of the 12 categories of understanding. Well, the categorization.
You said, sir. You said.
Okay.
This is about logic.
Okay. Okay.
You have read. Okay. You have written books on logic.
Okay. So
you said. I have said what you said.
Okay. So as far as the scheme which Sravani Mr. wants, Madam wants to know, actually, what Aristotle, when we talk of Aristotelian logic, he makes a distinction of propositions according to quality, according to quantity, according to relation, and according to modality. According to quantity, we have three kinds of propositions according to quantity. And we do teach to the students that there are universal propositions, or say general propositions, then particular propositions, and singular propositions. So according to quantity means, say, when I say universal, it is about all. When I say general propositions, it's about all. But when I talk of particular propositions, it is about some. Okay. And singular proposition is representing some individual. A subject is a particular individual. Okay. So Kant too has tried to save the categories relating to quantity by saying universal propositions to represent a sort of unity. Okay. So general propositions reflecting the category of unity, and the particular propositions, he draws a parallel with what is called a plurality. Okay. And singular propositions, he equates, or say he draws a parallel with the totality. Now similarly, with respect to quality, we have three propositions in the Aristotelian sense, say affirmative propositions, negative propositions, and infinite propositions. So similarly in the Kantian thread, so affirmative proposition, something we talk about. So it says it's reality. When I say this is a pen, so it's a judgment, it is affirming something, so he says, he translates that as reality. And when I say this is not a pen, it's a negation. So it's a negative proposition for Aristotle, but it's a negative category for Kant. Then limitation means, infinite proposition. Infinite proposition means when I say proposition about not something. Suppose I say this is not being, this is not cat. So that sort of propositions may be called infinite propositions, and that is the limitation. When I say this is a cat, I understand what a cat is, but I say this is not cat, so it is an infinite proposition. So that's there we get limited. Okay, what that not cat is. So that sort of propositions. So they come under infinite propositions for Aristotle, and that's a limitation for Kantian, and that's a limitation, the category of limitation for Kant. When we talk of relation, in the Aristotelian sense, we have relational propositions may be categorical, or say hypothetical, or disjunctive. So categorical propositions means, suppose a proposition of the sort grass is green, which Pramod sir was saying. It's a categorical proposition. There is no condition attached. It is purely categorical. Because there is no condition. Okay. A is B, it's a categorical proposition. But when you talk of hypothetical proposition or a disjunctive proposition, they are conditional proposition. Hypothetical proposition means a proposition of the sort if then. If this is the case, then that will follow. If the clouds appear, then it will rain. If you study well, then you will pass. So this sort of proposition is a hypothetical proposition, and disjunctive proposition is a choice between the two, either this or that. Okay, so it's a disjunctive proposition. So similarly, with respect to Kant, we have a categorical proposition, say in the form of what Professor has said is a subsistence and inherence, inherence and subsistence. Suppose when we take a flower, say a flower. So we talk of the fragrance in the flower that is inherent in it. Okay, so there is no condition attached. If you have a flower, there is fragrance in it, or the color is inherent in the flower. There is no condition attached. If it is a flower, if it is an object, why flower? Any object, if it is carrying a color, the color is inherent. You cannot take away the color away from that object. It is inherent. So again, when you talk of the hypothetical proposition, I say if-then propositions are hypothetical. So Kant is talking about cause and effect. If there is a cause, then that will lead to an effect. Or the other way around, if you talk of an effect, then definitely it has a cause. So that's the parallel again Kant has made. And then the disjunctive propositions, which are taken as either or propositions. Okay, and this is in the Kantian sense, they are taken as in the form of some activity, say making the choices, say what Pramod has talked of action and reaction. Well, it is another categorization where disjunctive action and reaction. So this is how, with respect to relation, the categorization has been made. And with respect to modality, modality means, say, propositions may be necessary, or they may be assertory, or they may be problematic. Problematic propositions are probable propositions, and that's why Kant has also translated the probable propositions as something that is possible or impossible. The probable proposition is Kant made a category corresponding to possibility or impossibility. And then when you talk of necessary proposition, say 2 plus 2 is 4, it's a necessary proposition. So Kant similarly tried to build a category based on such necessity and contingency. So necessity means always there, and contingency means sometimes yes, sometimes no. So that sort of category again that has been built based on the Aristotelian structure. As regarding the assertory proposition means a proposition. Say I say this is a pen. I make it. This is an affirmation. This is an affirmation. So it implies existence. When I say this is not a pen, so it's a negation. This is a pen. When I make an assertion, it implies an existence. When I deny something, okay, so it's a non-existent. This is not a pen. It's a negation. So it's non-existent. So that's how very nicely, very intelligently, very putting a lot of mind to it. The 12 categories that Aristotle has discussed with respect to logic and the logical sense, Kant has framed the 12 categories of understanding. So interesting, and it is clearly said for the judgment to be possible, as Professor Das has said, that the sensations have to be distributed among these categories, and then by the synthetic activity of the mind, we get a form of the perception that we have, and that is knowledge. We get the form of what we have seen externally. So, and this form is both synthetic as well as a priori. Synthetic because something from outside, a new knowledge has come in. That's why it is synthetic. It is a priori because the categories due to which this knowledge is possible, that conditioning is a priori. So that's why it's a very technical thing. That's why for Kant, knowledge is both synthetic as well as a priori. Thank you, Shravani Madam, for raising this question. Thank you, Professor Das, for very good lecture. Well, I don't see any other question in the chat box. Yes. So I should thank the speaker for such a nice lecture. And I have learned many things from this, especially the transcendental. I didn't know the transcendental analytic again is subdivided into exposition of categories and the transcendental reduction of categories. And again, he has said for Kant there is a logical self. So Kant believes in a logical self. I was not clear what this logical self is. So he has again made it clear that that Kant does believe in a self, and that is the logical self. And that logical self is not same at different points of time. So that's another good take from this lecture. Thank you so much, sir. So I think I don't see any questions in the chat box. I really feel good being connected with this because a lot of things could be learned from this, and I really enjoyed and hope people might have enjoyed this. And so thanking everybody. Now I request Swarnalata Tripathi madam to propose a formal vote of thanks. But it's okay anyway because I don't see any question. Let us move to Swarnalata Tripathi madam.
Namaskar to all. Today we discussed an important topic, Transcendental Analytic of Immanuel Kant. Space and time are necessary conditions of knowledge. Categories of understanding are also necessary conditions of knowledge. When reason interferes beyond these formal conditions, we land in illusions. Mind should be free from illusion. Pramod explained this issue of epistemology very nicely. We are grateful to Pramod for his wisdom and contribution. We are thankful to Dr. K. Om Narayan Rao sir for his nice synopsis of the talk. Dr. Rao sir was academically engaged with SSB candidates and very nicely conducted 3 sessions. He is the man behind the successful move of philosophical discussion. We are really grateful to him. We are grateful to all the participants for being with us in this session. And I request you all to attend webinar program tomorrow in Philosophy Family. Thank you all. Pranam. Over to Rao sir.
I also thank Swarnalata Tripathi madam for being connected with us through the Wisdom Intellectual Forum, and it is her effort again I say that could keep this process, this program in continuation. And I should thank once again the speaker and Swarnalata Tripathi madam. It is the joint effort that could make this program so successful. We are not concerned about the numbers, how many are attending. My satisfaction lies in that something new has been delivered. Whoever is attending, something I could learn. So that should be the satisfaction after the webinar is over. And it's not just number, 200 have attended, 100 have attended. It's immaterial. How that matters if you have not understood anything. Even though it's a small group, say 15, 20 participants, but we learn after the talk. So it's a great take. I think the categories, the 12 categories, I think those who have attended, they will never forget there are 12 categories for Kant. And how a parallel has been drawn between Aristotle and Kant. So that's the thing that we should learn, that this is how we give and take. So we give the time to take what the speaker is giving. Okay, so it's a give and take. Because your time is also valuable. You're giving time for this. So when you're giving time to that, you should take also from the speaker. And the speaker is also giving very good things in a very simple manner. Take whatever you can. So this is the message from me. Thank you. Thank you everybody. Thank you Deepak Behera Babu and Sravani madam and Rita Rai madam and everyone. Jaydev sir and everyone who got connected with this and made this webinar so successful, and also the student friends who joined. So thanking everybody, and also Sravani madam, everybody I should thank for making this lecture so successful. Thank you all. Now I declare this webinar closed. Thank you all.